Hello out there, rock and rollers, and welcome to the Ugly American Werewolf in London podcast recorded just off Abbey Road here in snowy London. It's been nice to see the snow come down this week. Maybe it hasn't been sticking too much, but it's been pretty, and it's been a nice break from the usual gray rain that you get all through the winter here in London. This week, we've decided to review another British rock royalty classic record, one that's meant a lot to me over the years, and that's Dire Straits' live album Alchemy, coming out in 1984. Of course, everybody's familiar with Brothers in Arms, Money for Nothing, Walk of Life, Latest Trick, from that juggernaut that propelled them into super ooper duper star status. Before that, they were a successful rock and roll band centered around the talents of Mark Knopfler, an incredible songwriter, a solid vocalist, and a real virtuoso guitar player who really captured the attention of musicians and other guitar players all over the world. So they had 4 albums coming up: Dire Straits, Communique, Making Movies, and Love Over Gold, plus an EP just before they put out the live album, and they do capture a song from the EP on Alchemy. But Alchemy really shows the amazing talent of Mark Knopfler as a guitar player and how tight Dire Straits was as a live rock and roll band. The lineup may have expanded by the time they'd gotten to Alchemy here in 1983, was when the show was recorded at Hammersmith Odeon. But it really captures an extraordinary band at the height of their powers before things changed. I won't say they softened up on Brothers in Arms, but you don't see the heavy-duty guitar work in there like you see on the previous albums, and they're afforded the opportunity to stretch these songs out, explore them, and really put a live stamp on them. So let's go back in time. Let's go to 1984, though recorded in 1983. This is a look at Alchemy by Dire Straits here on The Wolf. I appreciate you doing Alchemy on such short notice, because we didn't listen to it in college, and we would have worn it out, I'm pretty sure, especially Sultans of Swing, the 11-minute live edition of Sultans of Swing. We would have had that on quite a bit on many a night, man. But this has been a huge go-to album for me in the last, call it 15, maybe more years. And I don't know, I never get tired of listening to it. It's only got 11 songs on it. They do stretch them out, but Knopfler is so good and he's so tight. And to me, this is the best showcase of Mark Knopfler on record.
This was an interesting deal for me, because I'll be honest, like, I know the songs, but I really haven't listened to this album quite that much. But the thing that really struck me is, you're right, this is a showcase for Mark Knopfler, but the rest of the dudes in the band are super tight, and they know exactly, here's how much we can give you, and then, okay, it's time for him, and now we take a step back. Mm-hmm. I understand that Dire Straits was, and will always be Mark Knopfler. You could easily just be called Mark Knopfler Does This. But the guys that he has with him, I think they are very underrated, just kind of listening to it now. Because like I said, he's going to do what he's going to want to do. Okay, now he's going to play a little. Okay, now we have to, boom. Oh, now he's, taking a break. Okay, back in. Mm-hmm. And there doesn't seem to be any kind of weird, I don't know what I'm doing. There's no one who is kind of over showcasing themselves. It's a testament to how great all of these guys work together in a band that you kind of know your place.
Look, John Illsley, who's the bass player, I thought he was fantastic on this, man. And from the opening track, man, Once Upon a Time in the West, that boom, 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 boom. He is on top of it, man. And it's not drowning out bass. It's not
over distorted.
It's not over distorted. Yeah, exactly. It's nice and clear. But it's in the background, right? It's right. Still, following the drum. And the drummer was off the charts here. And that's was it Terry Williams, who had replaced Pick Withers, I think the year before, that year or something like that. You're right. I mean, the musicianship is top notch. And you know what? I saw something, because it looked like it was a New York area television show from the 80s, like a music show, okay, that had this guy, he was like a white guy, with a polo shirt on and kind of a weird haircut, just kind of sitting in front of a window saying, Dire Straits came onto the scene in 1978 with Sultans of Swing. And from there, it was like, and I'm like, I wonder if Gary, because you grew up in the tri-state area, I wonder if you had heard of this guy. And it was like an Italian name, like Scandinetti or something like that. But then he's interviewing Mark Knopfler like in the studio in what I think is 1984. And he's talking about, and it's just interesting because when you were talking about last show, when you can hear things on records that are obviously multi-tracked and produced, like you couldn't hit all those drums at the same time, you obviously looped something in there, right? And we've talked for a long time about how bands like Kiss that we love, and a lot of people, a live album will not always be 100% live, right? People will go back and punch stuff up, and it might not even be the person who played it, and Rob Zombie, kind of famously said on Hired Gun, which is a great documentary if you guys have seen it, on, how people get in and out of bands, and, how their A players out there can always have jobs, and sometimes you get lucky and become a member of a band if you have the gig long enough. But anyway, talking about, like, he learned naively, what do you mean all the guys in the band or all the guys on the cover here, they're not playing on the record? What do you mean other people are playing on the record? I see their names and faces right here. And so Knopfler was saying how he was putting together the Alchemy record, and he's talked to friends and been like, this live album is not live at all. They've basically re-recorded everything. The only thing they kept was really like the noise from the crowd to make it sound live, Or he's like, but this that I just did, there's no overdubbing on it at all. There's no re-recording or none of that, it's live. And I think it was 2 nights at Hammersmith Odeon. They may have recorded it because they also did the film, and that way maybe you get to choose the better of the two if you had one night where a song sounded better. But I believe him. It sounds crystal clear. It's consistent through the whole thing, right? They kind of had the same tempo all night. They kind of had the same tone all night, and it sounds amazing, and it's authentic. I mean, I believe it.
Well, and I think that comes from, you were talking about Hired Gun, having people in the band who are exceptional musicians. Knopfler, I was doing a little research for this. They call him like a prodigy, or an officiate, something like that, where it's just, he's just in his own universe. And then he gets these guys who are just top-notch musicians, and they can all play together and let him kind of showcase him. I don't think anybody's under any misconceptions that they're there to see them. Mm-hmm. They're not there to see you. They're there to see Mark Knopfler. But I get to play on stage with these other guys, and yeah, it doesn't sound like, and Knopfler's, his vocals are not, he sings very low, so it's not one of those things where, like, yeah, the high notes, we missed those tonight, or one too many whiskey sours before. So they have to go in and re-record them. No, I mean, you're right. It does sound 100% live to me, or I would have no problem believing that was the case. And that's what happens when you have exceptional musicians.
Yeah, and you're right. Mark Knopfler is special. I put him in the top 10 guitarists of all time as far as playing ability and the stuff that he's left behind. And folks who are unfamiliar with his solo stuff, you should really go check it out. I think you'd love some stuff like Sailing to Philadelphia, stuff like The Ragpicker's Dream, Get Lucky, Privateering. There's some great... He's made more records as a solo artist at this point than they made with Dire Straits. But, Dire Straits really only made 6 full records. From 78 to 85, they made 5, including Brothers in Arms, which came after Alchemy, right?
That's what I was thinking, too. Like, this is the calm before the storm. Like, I looked up the sales. Alchemy, and I understand it's a live record, so it doesn't really count, sold 250,000 copies in the United States. Brothers in Arms went on to sell 9 million copies in the United States, on its way to 30 million worldwide.
Yeah, so, one of the best-selling albums of all time, and all over MTV. We did our show last week on Sting and the Police, Synchronicity, blowing up MTV. This song and that video, Money for Nothing, owned MTV for like a couple of years as like the greatest. It looks campy now. It's something that I could even make animation-wise with my phone, probably. But it dominated MTV. It sold so well. They dined out on that for a long time. They didn't make their next album until we were in college in 1991.
Yeah, I think that might have been one of those deals where it was, obviously they're a live band. They played a ton of shows, and then it's like, yeah, I mean, how do you top that? Where do we go from here? I don't know. Maybe we should really think about this. And the other thing, too, is 30 million copies. That'll buy you a lot of a lot of downtime.
That's for sure. Yeah, you got to go out and spend some of that money, right? And they could still go out and tour on that for a while. Plus, Mark Knopfler was in huge demand. Okay, he was a very in demand studio musician, a very in demand collaborator, and a producer. You know, he produced Bob Dylan's Infidels, you know, in the early 80s, got Mick Taylor to play on the album. You know, he was a session man for Steely Dan, which is really saying something. That's not like just, you know, they get you off the street for Steely Dan. You got to be pretty good to pull that off, you know. He's collaborated with Clapton a lot over the years. He's done a lot of work for soundtracks. The most famous of being, well, what would you say the most famous was? I mean,
it has to be The Princess Bride.
Princess Bride, probably, I would say. Wag the Dog is the music. The movie's obviously not going to hold the same place in everyone's heart as The Princess Bride. But he always finishes the show. Was it Going Home?
Going Home from Local Hero.
From Local Hero, right. He always closes the show with that. He does his solo tour. I've seen him 3 times. Saw him at, what's the place in Nashville? It used to be the old church. It used to be the Grand Ole Opry.
The Ryman.
The Ryman, yeah. I saw him at the Ryman.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Do you know anything about how he learned how to play?
Well, because his finger-picking style, you think he taught himself?
That's what it looks like to me. I've never seen any. His hand looks so painfully weird when he plays, and he makes a sound that really no one else does. I've got to imagine he just kind of would hear like Chet Atkins songs and say, you know what, I can play along to that. Kind of just, you know, a kid in his bedroom just picking away at this thing, matching what he heard, and then taking it from there.
And maybe that's part of what gives him this gift, because he's not doing it like everybody else does. It's amazing the notes that he fits in and the way that he can kind of make harmonies with both hands and then move very quickly to something else very smoothly. I don't know. It's special. I mean, look, Jeff Beck may be the best guitar player ever, possibly. I don't know. He plays without the pick. He's pretty special. There aren't that many other people who do it. Lindsey Buckingham comes to mind. And then some people can do it some. It wouldn't shock me if Stephen Stills or Neil Young or those guys can do it, but they jam out with the pick. So it's a rare skill, I guess. And especially his talent's just different.
Yeah, and he's got a very unique way of not only playing but sounding. You know, if you heard something, you're like, that's Mark Knopfler. I can tell the way that he plays.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's got a really cool feel, and it's interesting to see him, like I don't know, I think it was like Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something like that, when he gets up with a couple other guys to watch them play. You know, guys like Jeff Beck, I think it was, you know, he was with Stevie Ray Vaughan one time or something at these jam out sessions, and it's like, yeah, he doesn't, I know he's playing the same kind of music and the same instrument, but it doesn't really look like, he doesn't look like anybody else up there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got that really distinct voice too. He doesn't have a lot of range in it, but also, you know, as soon as Mark Knopfler.
Mark Knopfler, right there, yeah. So he's writing the songs, right? He's always written his songs. He may collaborate with people sometimes, but he's always written the songs, written them in Dire Straits as a solo artist, wrote songs with other artists, wrote for films. And then you're this extraordinary virtuoso, like specially gifted guitar player. And then, yes, you are the recognizable voice. You may not be Paul Rodgers or Robert Plant, but you do have a nice voice. You can tell your own stories. And that's what I think gives him some authenticity, right? Kind of gives him a real troubadour kind of feel.
It's more, he sounds to me more like Bob Dylan is not going to get out there and belt out, you know, these tunes, but Bob Dylan sings Bob Dylan songs very well. I think Knopfler sings Mark Knopfler songs perfectly.
Yeah. Tom Waits does great Tom Waits, you know.
Correct. Yeah, you don't want to hear him singing the Star Spangled Banner, but you want to hear him singing Tom Waits songs. Yes. Yeah. And just and like you said, in listening to that Alchemy record and on Sultans of Swing, you've heard Sultans of Swing 7,000 times.
Yep.
But to hear them do a 10-minute, how long is it? 10-minute, 48-second
11-minute version, yeah.
That song can't be that long. Well, yeah, it can if do it right. And it's not. In listening to this too, somebody was complaining about, I want to say it was Joe Walsh, and Joe Walsh doing a 14-minute version of a freak out thing. It just doesn't sound like that to me. It doesn't ever sound over the top or esoteric. It sounds like, yeah, that really fit together. It all fit together well. It wasn't just somebody going off and let me just show off for you. It's
really composed, right? It is thought out, and yeah, you're right. And it builds momentum up and it brings it back down and it gives other people a time to kind of stretch out a little bit. It's interesting that actually, when I was doing some research, one of this, because you have to categorize the album, of course, and it said rock, progressive rock. I'm like, well, I never really thought of Dire Straits as progressive rock. That's pretty pretty old style rock and roll to me, guitar driven. I don't know, though, when you start to get into extending songs, there are a lot of keyboards and piano on this album. I guess it could loosely fit in there somewhere. But anyway, no, I find the whole thing super listenable. And even he was saying in that same interview on that same show, it's like, I actually prefer the live stuff to the stuff on the record sometimes, because sometimes the stuff on the record it's based around what room you're in, or the time, or who you're working with, or that kind of thing. And if you had time to work it out on the road more, something like that, it could be different. And they do, obviously, most songs evolve over time. Yes, you've got to do something that sounds like it was on the record, but songs can kind of grow and change, with the right kind of talent, right?
And I also think too that when you're okay, just for the listening audience out there, don't get me wrong, I've never recorded an album before, so just take it easy here. This is just what I'm thinking. If you're in the studio, you've got somebody in the control room who can stop you and say, do that again. I'm not feeling it. You're live. That's it. You don't have a net. Let's see where this goes. And you don't. I would think it'd be more of I don't want to say burden, but it's like, again, once we start, we can't stop. So we gotta all fit this in together. There's no safety net here playing live. And for guys like that who have mastery of their instruments, it might also be freeing, because you're never going to get that stop button pushed.
Right. And they were practiced. I mean, they went out there and hit the road. They worked hard for those years in Dire Straits, because the albums came out, 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row from 78 to 81, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And I would guess that probably there was, tours in between all of those. So yeah, you get to a point where it's like, I gotta take a break. I'm tired here.
Well, and that's what happened to David Knopfler, Mark's brother. It was those two, the Knopfler brothers, playing guitar back in the day in Newcastle. And they hooked up with John Illsley and Pick Withers, who were also from the Midlands, to make Dire Straits. And they kind of went from there. And, they got a demo to a DJ that included Sultans of Swing on it. So that's kind of amazing. That's basically their first song was Sultans of Swing. It's all-time unbelievable. No wonder people thought he was a virtuoso. The first song he ever said, well, I think this is pretty good. Would you mind playing on the radio? And that's Sultans of Swing, man. That's easy. My dad always talks about how Money for Nothing was their best song. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Have you heard Sultans of Swing? Moreover, have you heard the long version on Alchemy? Because that is the one I've known from a young age that the Alchemy version was so awesome. That's why I was sorry I wouldn't have it in college. But hey, to buy that new in college, that's a double CD. That's $30. We're buying used CDs for $6.99, because the $7.99 ones we can't buy too many of those, right?
Yeah, I think that was the real challenge then. Yeah, I mean, that is a huge outlay of cash. Like, what was it, like probably like $20 or $23 for a double CD?
I bet it was 30. And and the thing is, we had the best of Dire Straits. We had the studio stuff, right? So that that would have been a big investment. And we had other places. We were it's all kind of where you are in your life, right? We all go through these different stages and stuff. We just had an overlap there for a couple of years.
Yeah, but I think that it is interesting that, like you were talking about your father saying, how Money for Nothing was the greatest deal. It's really not. When you go back and listen to this really is Dire Straits in their purest, truest form. I don't want to say they sold out to MTV, but like they changed things up a little bit, and it's not the same thing. I think if you really are a Dire Straits fan, this is more up your alley than that.
Absolutely. And Mark Knopfler doesn't play Money for Nothing in his solo concerts, really. I take that back a little bit, because I think in the not too distant past here, he did actually break it out. I've seen him play several times, and he never played it, and I never wanted to or expected him to play it. I don't really, I don't need that. Walk of Life is fun live from that record, and obviously Brothers in Arms can maybe get a tear out of you if he does it right on the right night. Great album, but I'm with you. This was Dire Straits hitting on all cylinders, just killing it with everything they made before the monster that changed them, and kind of broke up the band, because then at that point it's like Mark Knopfler's always in demand, and he just proved with him playing guitar, writing the songs and singing, he could have one of the biggest, it's a top 10 album in British history. That means he's got more than like Beatles and Stones and, some serious albums he's sold more than. So suddenly he's like, okay, I can get out of this, because I don't know if he likes fame. I don't know if fame is his thing, but money might be.
Like it to me. I've seen a lot of interviews with him, and it never seems like he's not Mick Jagger. He's not look at me, look at me. Yeah, I don't know how that changed him. You were kind of bumping along with, we got gold records, maybe you get a platinum one, and then all of a sudden this blows up, and it's like, oh, whoa, I'm not ready for this. What is this? Oh, come on, we want you on MTV every 20 seconds, and tell us about how, your crazy life of a rock star, and that's not me. I'm sorry, that's
right.
I'm not the person you're looking for. I just want to go kind of hang out and play.
Yeah, apparently he took the Tube to a show here in London, and eventually somebody kind of recognized him. He just kind of gave him a wave, hey, I'm like, God, that's bizarre, But he's the obvious talent. There's no doubt about it. And the stuff that he's done away from Dire Straits is very strong. His film work is strong. His stuff, and he's done some kind of country stuff. The Notting Hill Billies. He did an album with Chet Atkins. He did All the Road Running with Emmylou Harris, and then a live one that really helped me and my wife because I've been trying to indoctrinate her into rock and roll because she grew up with a lot of that country stuff that I can't really lend myself to very easily. So I'm trying to find some common ground. I'm like, okay, well, look, here's Mark Knopfler. He wrote that Sailing to Philadelphia album that you like. Here he is with Emmylou. See if you like, this one. Of course, she loved it. And eventually I had to hide it from her because she wanted to listen to it every single night after work. I'm like, okay, I'm glad you like it. We can listen to it, every couple of weeks. It's every single night. We can't do that for anything, right? So anyway.
That is true, yes.
Right.
But it is cool. It's a testament to him that he can kind of switch back and forth between, what is he? Is he country? Is he prog rock? Is he rock and roll? Yes. The answer is yes. I can play all of that in my own style. I can do whatever you need me to do. The Princess Bride soundtrack. That doesn't. It's him. You can tell it's Mark Knopfler, but it doesn't sound like anything else that he's done. He's a true composer / musician.
And so at this point, the band, I guess, was just Knopfler had been busy, right? Love Over Gold comes out in '82. In '83, they put out the EP, which had 4 songs on it. I guess bands do that more in the UK or in Europe. It's never really been an American thing. It's like it's not quite a single and it's not quite a record. And I just feel like it just never really took off. It's something that bands kind of do over here. With Mark, he'd been so busy. He did do the soundtracks to Local Hero and to Cal. And, hadn't done Princess Bride quite yet. But he'd been doing a lot of studio stuff. He produced Bob Dylan's album, Infidels. He's in demand doing a lot of different stuff. And so 1984, they needed to put something out. It's the tour from, what was it recorded in 83?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, July of 83 in London at Hammersmith Odeon. Yeah, they needed to put that out, to do something in 84. I'm not sure if they toured or not. But also in this show that I saw, he's like, the next project is going to be a band album. When he's talking about when they're going to get into Brothers in Arms. And the band was pretty strong at this point because he still had himself and John Illsley from the original Dire Straits and had played on every Dire Straits album. Had Hal Linz, who had replaced his brother, David, on a few albums back, I think after the second album. How did it go?
Yeah, I don't think his brother didn't last long in the band.
Well, not once they broke. Yeah, I mean, not after they got signed. I mean, look, here's the thing: their first single was Sultans of Swing, and that got them on TV all over Europe, and it got them a bunch of touring opportunities, got them a chance to go to the States, chance to make a second album, chance to go back and tour again. And I don't think David liked to tour. I mean, maybe he wasn't taking care of himself. I don't know. Plus, it's got to be tough, man. If everyone's saying your brother's a genius, your brother's a wunderkind, he's special, we're going to offer him premium studio gigs, we're going to offer him the chance to make movie soundtracks, we're going to make him a producer, we're going to give him the slickest, reddest guitar so he looks cool. Because that's the thing. Mark's never been a real good-looking guy. If he can be this big of a rock star, it must be because he's talented, right?
Well, and that's an interesting thing to think about too, because like I was as you were saying that, I was thinking about Alex Van Halen. But like at least with that, they did different things. Like, right. Yeah, Eddie's the greatest guitar player ever. Okay, yeah, I play the drums. Okay, yeah, drum, blah, blah. But this is okay. He's the greatest guitar player ever, and you also play the guitar, but not as well. I mean, you kind of just. You got your role in the band. And yeah, I mean, maybe that was part of it too. It was like, you know what, forget it. I don't want to do this anymore and be constantly compared to, well, I guess you also play guitar. Okay.
Right.
Nice. Yeah. I don't know.
Like Michael Jordan's brother played some basketball,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, no, yeah, no one wants. Well, what I'm doing on this part of the song, no one cares about that. I'm
Right.
sorry.
But so yeah, this is Dire Straits just killing it, just on a roll. Terry Williams was the drummer. He'd replaced Pick Withers, and they picked up Alan Clark to be their keyboard man. So that's kind of like the core group. Now, also on stage, Mel Collins came in on the saxophone. And do you know any work by Mel Collins there, Action?
That name sounds very familiar to me, and I'm going to bet you he's. I mean, if Knopfler picked him up, he's got to be. I want to say like he probably did something with the Stones, maybe.
True.
Okay. That's one of those cool things where, yeah, if you do something like that, you're in very high demand. They're not going to pick up some chump.
No. He's pretty big time, And yes, he did tour with the Stones and recorded with them, and all sorts of people. Like, Alan Parsons Project, King Crimson, a lot of stuff with them. Who else comes to mind? He did a lot with our boy Jerry Rafferty.
Okay.
We love Jerry Rafferty. Richie Havens. What is Richie Havens known for?
Richie Havens is known for. Oh, you're going to stump me here. I don't. Go ahead.
He was the first act to play at Woodstock.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. And he made a really sweet song in the 70s with our boy Steve Hackett. If you haven't heard that one, definitely check that one out. But anyway, did one with him. Tina Turner, Roger Waters. This is, Bad Company, Humble Pie, Uriah Heep, Brian Ferry, The Small Faces, Camel. Yeah, 77, 78 with the Stones, man. He's pretty big time. He did the solo on Dance Hall Days for Wang Chung, man.
So he didn't have a whole lot of free time in his schedule.
So he was pretty good, right? And then they also had another keyboardist. I noticed if you watch the video, because the movie or the video is great. It kind of shows them chilling out, maybe shooting some pool at the beginning of the program there, and then they jump into the concert basically, and it sounds the same. It's again, you would have had to change the music on both the video, sync it to the video, and the record if you were really going to change the music. But it all sounds great. It all looks great. So they were killing it, and that's a great venue. I've only been to it once, but Hammersmith Odeon, just an historic spot where all the greats have played in London over the decades.
The other thing that's striking me now too, that I'm thinking about it, on that video, when you watch him play, he looks exactly the same. And I realize it's only a year or two. He looks exactly the same as he does in the Brothers in Arms stuff. He's got the same look. He's got the same deal. So that goes back to your, obviously not the rock star, like, oh, I need a whole new wardrobe for this. Just give me what I got. It worked for me once. Let's go again. Headband and the suit jacket. I don't care.
Give me the wristbands. It's hot under these lights. Just keep it out of my eyes and keep my hands dry.
Correct.
So I can do my thing. Back to the video, though, you notice him. He moves pretty easily when he's doing what seems to be some fairly intricate stuff on the guitar, right? He's moving around the stage a little bit. He kind of runs back to talk to people. He bounces around a little bit, and it just seems to kind of flow naturally to him. I wonder if he just kind of just has this magic in his hands that can separate from the rest of his body.
He seems very, very Eddie Van Halen-like, where it's not like he's really playing the guitar. It's more like it's an extension of himself. I'm sure he could sit there and have a conversation with you and play something at the same time. It's second nature to him. It's not, oh, geez, I've got to really concentrate on what I'm doing. It just comes naturally. And I would imagine that a lot of the stuff maybe that he's doing live, he's going to start to play, but we really don't know what he's going to play. Just let him go for a minute. He just kind of, whatever feels. What I'm saying is I don't think he actually wrote out all those notes. Like, it's just like, okay, I'm just going to, have a little jam here and then boom. Yeah, it's interesting to watch somebody like that play who has such a mastery of the instrument. So like you said, he's playing intricate stuff. He's jumping around. He's singing. He's playing with the rest of the band. Yeah, I think that he does not get enough credit for being the musician that he really is.
No, but Dire Straits did get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I know it doesn't mean you deserve it. It doesn't mean that you were awesome. It doesn't even mean you were rock and roll. Let's face it. But the band was entered into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'm a pretty big fan. And so you would want them to be in, but even I was like, maybe they're not deserving. If, there's certain other bands that aren't in yet, maybe they're not deserving. I don't know. But you can't argue that Mark Knopfler does not deserve to be in. It's kind of like Chic kept getting put up. Like Chic, let's put Chic in. Like, Chic just, they had some great hits, but they weren't that. Well, we got to get Nile Rodgers, and I'm like, okay, well, let's just make a special. We'll put Nile Rodgers category in, and that's what they did. And quite frankly, I've talked about this in the past. To me, that should have probably been the case for Jeff Lynne in ELO. And I think ELO may have gotten in the same year as Nile Rodgers. ELO, do they really deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? When Iron Maiden's not in, and it took Deep Purple so long to get in, and they're marginal to me. No grudge against them, but Jeff Lynne should absolutely be in, because Jeff Lynne was ELO, and he did all that amazing production in the 80s and 90s with all the Wilburys and all those guys. He deserves to be in. So the fact that Dire Straits got in is great, but Mark Knopfler certainly should be in, and I guess that's kind of what that was about, even though he did not go.
Yeah, and then you have the whole thing too with he went in for it. Now that you're putting it that way, it's almost like, I don't want to say a slap in the face, but it's really, he should just kind of be in for it just being Mark Knopfler, not for Dire Straits. He's got more things to offer than just that band. And I don't know why he didn't go. I don't know if there was some bad blood there. He wasn't feeling it. Maybe he just didn't want to be the center of attention. I don't know. Because what I've heard is that if you say yes to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it comes with a whole bunch of other baggage. Okay, well, you have to do this. You can't do this.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? No, thank you.
Well, there's plus, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame doesn't necessarily consult you on who they're going to put in, which members they're going to put in, and that kind of. And they put in David Knopfler for his contributions to the first two albums and then Up and Coming. And Mark and David famously do not get along now to this day. I think when he left the band, it was fairly amicable, and Mark continued to encourage him. David did some producing of his own and made his own records. They don't see eye to eye or even see each other anymore, from what I understand. So if David was going to be there, Mark was not going to be there. Plus, I don't think that they held it in that higher regard over here, like maybe we do in the U.S. And it is kind of U.S.-centric. Like I said, a lot of bands that I think are deserving that maybe more European-centric bands are out. It's a process we're not privy to. But, I think he says, I think it's big for Americans. I don't think it's as big a deal for us. And he doesn't need Dire Straits as part of his legacy. I mean, obviously he does. He still has the songs. But he doesn't need to go on one more stadium arena tour to make an extra $25-30 million. It might benefit the other guys to do one more tour. But I don't think he needs that, and I don't think he wants that pushed on him. I think he's very happy with his life the way it is and the records he's made solo.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where if you say yes to this tour, okay, you can't just, it comes with a lot of baggage also. So yeah, you're right. He's probably just like, you know what? I'll do what I want to do when I want to do it. If I see an opportunity that jumps up, fine. If not, yep, I'm at the house. I would imagine he's the kind of dude that would just sit there and play all day because that's what he loves to do. It's not a burden for him. So, who knows? Maybe he's recording stuff on his own just to pass the time. And if it comes to something, it does. And if it doesn't, that's okay too.
Well, he's got one of the best studios in London down by the river, and it's won awards for best studio in London. And the Who made their last album there, and it's someplace that people really want to work, And I think Hugh Padgham, who'd worked with him a lot back in the day on Dire Straits, is kind of a resident there a lot these days as a producer. So that's pretty cool. Look, I think it starts off really strong. There's kind of a little build-up to it, but they start into Once Upon a Time in the West. And again, this is one they really kind of stretch out a little. It's 13 minutes versus what you hear on the studio album. But it's cool, And again, John Illsley on that bass just driving do-do-do-do-do-do. You can see how they start off a little slow, but a little tight, and really sets the stage for what's to come.
And it is kind of a weird deal, or not weird, but interesting that you would start the show with a 13-minute song.
Right.
It just shows you that this is not a singles band. This is not a, here are the hits. Sultans of Swing is not till number 6. I would imagine that in 1983, the people that were at this show were just big fans of the band, kind of like a Rush show. Like, you're there because you love the whole catalog and not, I'll sit here and listen to, I can't wait for the 2 hits that they have.
Right. Yeah. No, and you want to see Knopfler, right?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It's like
we came to hear the band play. So go ahead and get it.
And then straight into Espresso Love, which is a little bit more upbeat, and he is kind of all over the neck on it, and I think it's awesome. It's a fun little story, being in love in the espresso shop, right? You fall in love with a barista, or it moves. It kind of gets it rolling there.
And I think maybe that's kind of something that gets lost a little bit too in the later works is when you go back and look at it, like even Sultans of Swing from the beginning he tells like story songs, like it's about a deal, or we'll get to Sultans of Swing in a minute, but it's Guitar Joe, he knows all the chords.
That's right.
It's just, and when you listen to it, you're like, okay, he's telling the story of just sitting there and watching this go by.
Yeah, kind of like a Dylan. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so then they get into Romeo and Juliet, always a big crowd pleaser. I looked up, it was never a hit in America, like never even charted. I'm like, that's ridiculous. It's an enormous hit. How many movies has it been in? How many weddings has it been played at? I mean, that's
interesting that
hit.
It never even charted in the United States. Because I remember hearing the song, but I think that was probably more on like album rock radio and not single stuff. But still, I didn't know that it was never charted at least.
And he's playing that acoustic, like steel acoustic guitar on there that not everybody can play. A beautiful song, a classic song. But, so they're, out of the gate now. They're like 25 minutes in or getting close to 30 minutes in. They just played all right, let's chill it out for a minute song. Love Over Gold, which is next, was only on the CD and the cassette, was not on the double LP back in the day. I only ever had the CD. In fact, Gary, I could only bring so many discs over here, didn't really bring that many. Brought a book of stuff, a lot of stuff I burned, or maybe I didn't have the jewel box for it anymore, or something like that. And so I brought that over, and then I just brought a couple other things. And then I just started buying stuff that I didn't have before. I had to buy Alchemy again because we did kind of pay up on Amazon so I could get basically every song I have back home. I can listen to it easily on there, but they don't have Alchemy on there. They have maybe everything Dire Straits did in the studio, and they might even have the live album from After on every street, but they don't have Alchemy on there. I'm like, well, I can't go this long without hearing Alchemy. So I had to go out and buy it again. So I do have two. I might even have three, because I may have had it used for a long time, and then it was inexpensive, and I bought it again. So I have a nice clean one. Now I just bought it again. Plus I have the DVD. It's been a go-to for me for a long time. But Love Over Gold, I guess, was not included. Not my favorite song, but it kind of brings it up a little bit more after Romeo and Juliet.
And it's interesting too, because that's only 3 minutes and 27 seconds, so that's a quick in and out on that one, and then you're on to the next track,
which is Private Investigation, which I like. It's kind of a gumshoe, or it's one of those 9 million stories in the city. This one is mine. And it's a great song. And again, I think Illsley stands out because of the way he kind of boom thumps that bass, boom.
Yeah. Boom. Yeah, just doing, knowing what he needs to do in the song, fitting in perfectly.
That's right.
Not overdoing it, not underdoing it, just perfect.
Right on there, yeah. And then, of course, Sultans of Swing, man, I remember hearing this in high school for the first time. After, obviously, I'd heard Sultans of Swing in the studio version and being like, wow, that's amazing. I got to get that tune. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. The way you think he's going to finish it, go into the wicked tight end of the solo part, and then they bring it down a notch. But even in the video, you can see he is in complete control. He is digging it. He's, when he's saying London, down in London town, that's right. He's happy to be in London that night.
Yeah.
And then when he's walking around, stepping back, he still knows exactly what he's going to do. He's got a smile on his face, not worried about it. I'm like, this is one of the best guitar solos in a song ever.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you told me, like if I'd never heard this before and you told me you could make Sultans of Swing 10 minutes and 54 seconds, I don't know about all that. Yeah, you can. And it doesn't sound overdone. It doesn't sound egregious. It doesn't sound like somebody just wailing away because they're trying to, inflate their ego. It's a tight 10 minutes and 54 seconds, which is kind of a strange thing to say, but it is.
It's wonderful, man. And the way they start to build it back up, and he can kind of pick away and add a little texture as it kind of goes slow. And now it's starting to pick up a little bit. Now I can do my thing a little bit more and slide all over that guitar and really hit those fast notes at the end, which is kind of the very famous part that made it the hit single that it was. Of course, it must have been an odd hit single just because it's without the extension. It's still like a 5.5, 6 minute song. It's still a fairly long song for a single back in the 70s, I guess Hotel California had come out a couple years before, and it's a good 5.5 or 6 or maybe even 7 minutes, something like that, with the killer, dueling guitar solos at the end, that the Beatles basically had to fight the record company. No, you can't cut that out. Thanks for the offer. But it's unbelievable. And then it kind of just builds this crescendo, and the drummer is doing the same thing, and he gives the keyboard player a little time to chime in. You want to play with me? Okay, go ahead, set me up. And then and the drummer, Williams, is clobbering those things in this song. When you get to the crescendo, when they're really making it build, he is going off.
And that's what I really wonder too. Like, did you rehearse that? Or is it like a thing where you're kind of in the middle of it and you give a little something to the keyboard player, like go? Or are they listening out for something? Like it really sounds to me like they're kind of in the moment, and they can feed off of each other and know when to come in, when to come out. Okay, we're going to go a little longer here. There's no awkwardness in it. I don't know. I'd love to think that it was a lot rehearsed, but also spontaneous a little bit too.
Well, it's something they developed together as they play over time. It wasn't like that was the first night of the tour, right? They've been building that chemistry and figuring out how to do these songs. And all right, Mark, maybe we'll say, hey, we're going to get a little longer on this part tonight, or let's try this a little bit. But you love to hear everybody jamming out and doing their best. At the end of Sultans of Swing, listen to the bass, listen to the piano, listen to the drums. I can't really hear the other guitar player, to be honest with you, but it's okay because Mark is there, and that's what you're listening to anyway, right? And I just wonder
if you'd seen this same show 5, 6, 7 times on this tour. Would it always be 10 minutes and 54 seconds? I doubt it. It would probably be, 11 and a half, 9, just somewhere in there. Like it's just, you just kind of play until whatever, okay, and now we're done.
Well, of course, he still plays it, does it live. He does extend it a bit. He doesn't quite do it as long as he did on this one, but he knows people are there to see it. And we got like second row seats to see him once. And we stood up for they did Sultans of Swing early, like the second or third song, and I stood up the whole time and jumped up and down. Nobody in the first 20 rows was even standing up. It was just like an older crowd in Indiana. I'm like, goodness, what's wrong with you people? What are you waiting for? It's like, which song are they going to play that's going to be, better? But anyway, that's disc 1, and it's like, whew, that's a strong way to end disc 1.
So we're done with this now? Oh no, we've got a whole other side.
That's the thing.
Just you wait.
And again, some longer songs here. One of my favorites, Telegraph Road, but Two Young Lovers, it starts out, not my favorite, but it's one of the shorter ones, and there's nothing wrong with the song. It's just there's other stuff I would rather kind of get on to.
Yeah, and then you get into, next is Tunnel of Love, which is, your 14-minute, 29-second extravaganza.
Yeah, the 14-20 Tunnel of Love. Well, here's the thing. The first 4 minutes of them kind of noodling a bit, and I think they're doing a little bit of Rodgers Hammerstein to kind of start the thing off, and then eventually, literally 3.5, 4 minutes in, he finds that, all right, it's called Tunnel of Love, and then they do 10 minutes of Tunnel of Love, 14 minutes is a lot, but there is a break kind of when they noodle around, they kind of do this intro thing, and this, okay, now we're going to do Tunnel of Love, and then they do that. But then it's followed by Telegraph Road, another almost 14-minute song. But Telegraph Road, with the working man's struggles and all the, kind of guitar breaks, the way they kind of bring it down, let the piano keys tinkle a little bit, the plight of the working man. It's an epic song. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think another underrated Dire Straits track. Unfortunately, I think they get, especially in the United States, kind of, you either like Sultans of Swing or you like Brothers in Arms, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of gets not forgotten about, but it just was never as hyped in the United States. And that's one of them.
Yeah, and it's a long song anyway. I mean, on Love Over Gold, on that album, there were only 2 songs on the first side of the LP, right? One of them being this one. So I love Telegraph Road, and I love the story I like the picture that it paints. First came the churches, then came the schools, then came the lawyers, then came the rules. Telling the story about how it all came together over the years and how the working man has been, that it was hard times, that it was war, how it had been squeezed out how the landscape has changed, but there's still the Telegraph Road.
Yeah.
I just think it paints it's very kind of Dylan, or even you want to go way back to like Woody Guthrie-esque.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me. Yeah, just well, I know it's not Americana, but the story of way back when. I'm gonna tell you, just sit there and I'm gonna tell you the story about how things used to be.
Yeah, and in the industrial age, things change and then they change again very rapidly.
Yeah.
Right? You're a boom town, you're a ghost town in one generation, in 2 generations, So just a great old one. And I almost got to see them do it. They were doing Telegraph Road one year on his solo tour, and then they mixed it up and they mixed in something. It was something they hadn't played in, like no one had played in 30 years. Or something like that. Not he or not Dire Straits, anything. So I think diehard fans really liked it. But I'm like, no, wait, whoa. Telegraph Road, man, no. Telegraph Road. And it's like, and you can shout stuff out if you want, but we're not going to play it. And I go, Telegraph Road, because I really wanted to hear it. Now, like I said, we were in the second row. And you could, with your tickets, they would give you like the opportunity to buy or to have like one recorded, like the MP3s of one show from that tour. So I chose that show. So it's like I have a souvenir from the show I was at. And I swear to you, Jackson, if you listen close enough, you might just be able to hear, because he says it, and you can say whatever you want, but we won't play them. I swear you can hear somebody say Telegraph Road, and that someone would have been me. So then the record wraps up with solid rock, which is kind of a get you moving, right? It's one of their more upbeat, more of a runner of a song. And like a pretty happy song, nice refrain, good playing on it. And then they end with Going Home from Local Hero, which, I mean, to this day, I feel like he almost always closes the show with.
Yeah, and that's a very cute movie if you haven't seen it out there. Podcast land about a ruthless, well, he's not ruthless, but the company is ruthless, oil exec who goes to a small Scottish town to put up drilling rigs, and he falls in love with the place.
Yeah, it's
boom. Lancaster is the kind of the elder statesman, and shows him not all about money, I guess, is the story, moral of the story. Yes. You don't want to ruin this town that's been there for so long. So cute movie.
Yeah, Boone from Animal House.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And then I guess there was a few that were recorded that didn't really make the record. So there's always hope that there could be an enhanced version in the future out there, Mark. This came out in 84, then we're probably only a few years away from a 40th anniversary, so you can get cracking on that. Industrial Disease, Twisted by the Pool, and Portobello Bell, I guess, were recorded for the record, and were not put on there. Although it says here that Portobello Bell was on the compilation Money for Nothing, and I remember that one. I remember hearing that. And then the other one, I think it was Industrial Disease, ended up on the Best of Dire Straits or something like that.
Okay, yeah. Money for Nothing, the Best of Dire Straits, I think that was on there.
Yeah, and then there was the Sultans of Swing, the Best of Dire Straits CD. There was a couple different Best of records. We had one of them in college, but the Portobello Bell is a really good song. Twisted by the Pool is kind of silly, if you ask me.
Yeah, I always thought that was like an ode to the 60s, just pop songs from back then. We're gonna have a good time twisted by the pool.
Yeah, it's like something they play on Happy Days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's always an interesting deal when they do repackage, remaster, and put these things out again. You got to give people a reason. Well, not you, but you have to give other people a reason to buy it again. And that's usually a good way to do it. Hey, you already have these things in the can. Just clean them up, put them on there on the deluxe version. Mm-hmm. You don't really have to do anything else to them. So it could be a possibility, absolutely.
And this was the live album. This is the one that really captured who they were at the beginning of their career. Pre-Money for Nothing, pre-Chicks for Free, pre-Brothers in Arms. Obviously waiting, ready to take that next step, and boy, did they take it.
Yeah, I wonder if it would be interesting to take the Mark Knopfler / everybody else in the band and the crowd and say, the next thing is going to be, you figure, oh, well, the next one, hopefully it'll sell a couple more copies than this, but just to know that the next thing was going to be bigger than anyone ever imagined would be interesting to see the look on their face, how the crowd would change this tour to the next tour. You probably had a lot of these people, but then you probably had a lot of people that had never heard one Dire Straits song ever, other than what was on Brothers in Arms, and maybe you heard Sultans of Swing once. But I wonder how the hardcore fans dealt with next turn
right.
of the band.
Yeah, I mean, huge, playing Live Aid, playing Wembley, playing Nebworth, playing whatever they want, for years. Playing Giant Stadium, I think. Huge, got them for everything. And then, of course, Mark had other stuff to do. He had to go make the Princess Bride soundtrack somehow in the middle of all that. He produced some more records. He worked on a lot of different stuff, and he had all that money to count and spend on something.
That takes a lot of time.
Who wouldn't like the trappings of all that wealth? Well, that's. Well, rock and rollers, that wraps up our show on Dire Straits live anthology Alchemy from 1984. Mark Knopfler and Dire Straits at their very best, at the peak of their powers, before they hit the big time with Brothers in Arms. A few things to clean up real quick. The TV show I was talking about was The Other Side of the Tracks, actually a British show filmed here in London, but with an American, Paul Gambaccini, as the host. That's what kind of threw me off, made me think maybe it was New York. It was a show that I referenced a few times there and got some good nuggets on Mark from. Also, Mark's great studio down by the Thames is British Grove Studios, something he's very proud of and has won many awards, has a lot of great folks recording there. And lastly, the tune I was talking about by Richie Havens with Steve Hackett, there are actually two from Steve's Please Don't Touch record. One was How Can I? The other one that I was thinking about was Icarus Ascending, a beautiful song that I highly recommend. Hey, who knows what we're going to do next week, but maybe you could help us out. Let us know what you want to hear about. We're at ugly_werewolf on Twitter, or check out all past episodes on uglyamericanwerewolf.libsyn.com. Until then, rock and rollers, be cool and stay safe.